If I was starting from scratch as a new homestead maker, this is what I would do and not do, what I would tell myself to do different or to kind of tell myself you're doing a good job. Number one, going down the minding your manners is to manage my mindset. I needed to manage my mind, and I will say that now I did not manage my mind on being a homemaker at all. I thought it was nothing more special than just a pastime. I did not approach it as a profession. And if I had approached it as a profession, I would have felt so much better about it. I would have done much better with it. I wouldn't have felt so guilty all the time. If I could just take the guilt away, like we feel guilty because we want to go home, but that's what we're supposed to feel. When you have kids, that's part of being a mom is wanting to be there for your family, wanting to be there for your kids. That's actually natural. And I would challenge anything that says otherwise because you are the only one that can love those kids the way you do. No one else will love those kids how you love them. So I would say managing my mind, I would go all in and think of it as a profession and not a pastime. And if it was to help anyone else out there, what I have learned, hindsight's 2020, right? Now I can say it's a profession and not a pastime, but in the moment it didn't feel like it. What I could say now is I thought I had given up my career. I hadn't given up my career. I changed professions and I had to learn a whole new profession. And it's a learning curve we're not always used to, but you can do it. And it's really the decision. Sometimes there's a line in the sand and you just cross it and you're like, this is my decision enough. So I would take it on as a profession and not a pastime. A, in minding your manners, is analyzing your assets. So I would probably go back and think more than money. Everybody thinks assets are money only, and they're not. Money is only one piece of the asset puzzle. And if I could just go back and relieve myself of all the anguish that I would put myself through as far as revenue goes, I would probably tell myself to make a list of all the things that are assets. And in some contexts, this could be like a list of things that are like a blessing list or something. Most of those things are assets. Your health and wellness is an asset. Your knowledge is an asset. Your skills are an asset. Who you know could be an asset. So you need to think beyond money and beyond revenue as resources. So, number three, nurture. This one hits a little bit home for me because we all have time. And honestly, it's the most expensive thing we have. And there's only so much of us that can go around. And I struggled with always thinking of the next thing I needed to get done instead of nurturing my network with intention. This is intentional time. We need intentional time with ourselves, even if it's 5 minutes. We need intentional time with our spouse, and we need intentional time with our family, our kids, the ones that live in the house. Beyond that is whoever else, but that is your core network. I would probably go back if I was starting from scratch and be more intentional with my time. I would take 5 minutes for myself to just be. And this is the nurture part that I like to kind of get like out there is I went down this rabbit hole of thinking it needed to be like the pampering. It needed to be the manicures, the pedicures, the facials, all the stuff that takes you away from home, takes your money. And honestly, it made me feel guilty in multiple ways Did I need to let it make me feel guilty? No. Was it anything wrong? No. But that is not the nurturing I'm talking about. I'm talking about just being. I'm talking about taking 5 minutes for yourself and just be still. That's it. It's really hard to do, but you need a minute. You need to take a minute. Some of us can only take 1 minute. Some of us can take five. Some of us can take an hour. Some of us can take, it depends on your season as to what you can do and how much time you can be intentional to take, but you've got to take it. You got to start somewhere, and it depends on your season as to how much time you'll have. So, beyond yourself, I would say your spouse. You need to take time to just be with them. It's the same thing. You don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to have, we need to go over this budget. We need to go over expenses. We need to talk about the kids. How about you just be with your spouse? How about you just appreciate them as a person, just like you needed to appreciate you as a person? And then go on to your kids. Be intentional with your time to just be with them. That is like, I did a blog post one time about being a present parent, and that was it. The way you're a present parent is to be present. It doesn't take like a formula or anything. How about you just be there? How about you just listen to them? How about you just appreciate them? It doesn't have to be forever. And when you have a lot of kids, doing things individually takes up a lot more time. But what if you do it as a group? You don't have to do it individually and close everyone else out. I couldn't do it, but I could just be there and listen to them. And in a way that, I mean, that just lets them know that you care. You care about yourself, you care about your spouse, you care about your kids, and then you can go beyond there. If you don't nurture yourself, your spouse, and your kids, you won't have anything for the rest of the folks. So, for optimize your opportunities, I would not take myself so seriously. I am a stickler from everything is serious, and nothing is funny unless it's someone else is doing it. Like I have to make things just right, or it's all a failure. I would really go back and say have fun. Everybody says it and no one wants to hear it, but the whole, enjoy the journey. It's not the destination. I get the words and it's hard to live it when you're in the moment. But what if you were intentional on that? What if you were intentional on learning something you always wanted to learn? What if you were intentional on making the most of a certain circumstance that happened? One thing that did happen, sometimes it still does. If something doesn't go the way I want, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. It doesn't mean I'm bad. Like just because it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to doesn't reflect necessarily me. We seem to internalize circumstances to be a reflection of us. Like if something went quote unquote bad, it means we're bad. We're not bad. I wasn't bad. It was just a circumstance. It was just, what am I going to do with it? I would make circumstances and situations way more maybe fun if possible, but not take everything so personally. And then also the opportunities of living fun also include learning things that are fun. What if I wanted to learn how to ski and never learned how to ski? I always bring up knitting. Knitting is a fun craft to learn. I like crafts, I like music. What if it's a music? What if it's a foreign language? What if it's all these things? What if your whole family could learn one language and then you go to that country? Oh my gosh, how cool would that be? So, making the most of it would be optimize your opportunities. Take a situation, is what you do with it, and then be intentional on making opportunities, just elevate them, elevate those opportunities. Okay. R is refine your reputation. What do you like about your reputation and what do you not like about your reputation? Who do you want to be known as? What do you want to be known for? These are things on personal and self development that are work. Your health and wellness is part of this. Your Self talk is part of this. How people view you is part of this. How you view yourself. All of those have to do with your refinement. If I were starting from scratch, I would probably tell myself this is a work in progress. There is no end point because just like the refiner's fire, it is on repeat. So once you have refined something, there's always something else. I probably wouldn't suggest doing more than one thing at a time if there's some deep stuff to work on. I would also probably highlight health and wellness as number one because there's a lot of things in that that can affect other areas of our lives. So that would be what I would do if I had to start over from scratch. Refine. Okay, simplify your situation is the S in mind your manners. And I have to say, this is all about the home and the homestead, home based living. And I wouldn't do much that's different than what I did. I started by learning how to bake bread, canning tomato sauce, starting a garden, starting a compost, and raising chickens. Like if I had to do it all over, and I've done these with advising other people on how to do it and learning and mentoring and that sort of thing, those are five basics that I would start again. Now, with the caveat of saying you don't have to grind your own grain in order to learn how to bake bread. I would recommend starting the bread from store bought flour. I would start the tomato sauce, the canning from tomatoes that I did not grow. So go to the store, I would get the tomatoes. We went to farmers markets. Even better would be to go to your neighbor farm if you can, straight off the farm. Second would be the farmers market. Learn how to can the tomato sauce. So that would be the second thing to learn as far as the home and the homestead living. And third, compost. We took just bricks in the backyard and made like a square. We made two squares, really. They were next to each other. And we would just throw all the compost in one and fill it up. And we'd have it covered up with, I think, a piece of plywood or something. And then when that one was full, we would do the other one. And then it went back and forth. So that's how we started a compost. And there's a reason why I would recommend compost in the beginning. And that is you will have so many things that can go in the compost that don't have to go in the trash. We usually scrape it into the trash can like food scraps, or it goes in the garbage disposal, and neither one of them are necessary for food scraps or paper or sometimes cardboard. I mean, there's really plastics and things like that that maybe you can recycle and glass if you could find a good spot for them to be recycled. But food scraps in particular, you will have food scrap that you could just compost and you will grow soil for the next thing, which is growing a garden. If you cannot grow a garden, I would recommend that you plan a garden. If it is winter where you are and you cannot grow a garden, maybe your ground is frozen, plan the garden. Even if it's in the middle of a season and you can't get to it, plan it. At least plan it. Learn about one crop that you can grow, that you want to grow. And it has to be something that you would eat, and preferably something that you really like eating. It could be cucumbers, it could be tomatoes, it could be squash, summer squash, pumpkin, any of that kind of stuff. Pick one and learn how to grow it. And if you can't plant the garden, plan the garden. So, bread, canning, composting, garden, and then last, I would say chickens. If you put some chickens out, you got a homestead, right? No, but chickens are a very versatile animal. They are usually very hardy, but I would start with chickens as far as a farm animal that's not a dog or a cat to raise. You don't need a lot. It depends on your size of your family, but you really don't need a whole lot of chickens to get plenty of eggs. You can take my story of having too many chickens and just take that as a word of wisdom here. At one point, I had over 600 chickens of varying ages, and I was fairly new at the homesteading lifestyle, and I had at least 12 dozen eggs a day. And that wasn't even counting all of them. That was just the adult chickens. That wasn't the like adolescent and then the babies. And then it was all going to be way more than 12 dozen a day. And anytime you have more than enough, no one wants to eat it anymore, right? So that became an issue. But I would say the chickens are definitely the number one farm animal that I would recommend raising. And maybe 2 reasons for the chicken. They're very versatile. You can get the eggs and you can get them, as meat eventually once they are done with their laying years. But the other thing is you can actually feed them your scraps. So if you don't have a compost pile, which I do recommend, like we ended up having a lot of food scraps because we had a lot of people. Well, sometimes that's overwhelming for a compost pile if it's not big enough. Well, the chickens, they love to eat your scraps. They love to just turn those scraps into soil and into eggs. And then that would be like the beginner homestead to me is bread, canning, garden, compost, chickens. But you don't have to get 600. Get 6. They do like company, so I wouldn't do less than 2, and if you're getting them as babies, get more than you think you'll want in the end. But you can always go to 4-H, at least in our area. The 4-H kids will raise chickens. I think in August they'll do an auction, and then they auction off their chickens that they've raised to a certain age, and they're almost ready to start laying. So if you want to go bypass the baby stage of chickens and get to where they're pretty close to laying, and you don't want to just buy fully full grown because you don't know how long they've been around when you buy it from like maybe Craigslist or something. But that's a good way to support your local 4-H and those 4-H kids who are learning all these things along the way. So that is what I would do if I was starting from scratch as a new homestead maker. Some things I would refine about myself, what I would do the same, and what I would do different. So if you want to make the most of your homestead maker journey, make sure you're on that email list at thehappyhomesteadmaker.com.